I think a lot of times a leaving spouse has unrealistic expectations of how this process is going to go, how long things are going to take, how they need to plan. And it's hard because, you know, you have in your head the way it's going to go, and then it doesn't go that way, and then it's challenging. And I feel like if you knew in advance kind of what the expectations are a little bit more, you could create a workable plan to help get you out of the abusive situation you're in. What I want to do is kind of give you an expectation. I think that sometimes women in particular, obviously, that's, you know, I'm not trying to be sexist, but most of the time it's women who are being abused. I mean, men are usually just physically bigger and stronger than us. But I think that women, they're afraid to leave a lot of times, obviously. And, you know, if you're going through this, you definitely need to leave and get help. And there are shelters and there's all kinds of options that you have. But I think what I would like to do is try to give them an idea of the system and what happens and how it works.
Can I say
they have a plan?
Can I say one more?
How they're going to do this?
One more thing about this, and then I'll let you move on. That a lot of times the women in these abusive situations have adopted a strategy of passivity to deal with their situation.
Right.
And that's a very hard habit to break.
Right. They try to just give in.
They give in.
Keep the peace.
Right. And maybe the threat has always been, if you go to the police with this, I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to, you know, and it takes a lot of courage actually to stand up. If you've been in a situation where where there's ongoing abuse, a lot of times it takes tremendous courage to finally say this isn't happening anymore.
Right.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and, you know, essentially you need a plan. What happens is a lot of times people they wait until that point of crisis or severe conflict or whatever, and then they're trying to figure out how to leave in the midst of this crisis, and they don't have a plan in place. A lot of times until there's some point of crisis like that, people don't do anything. But if you're in a situation where somebody has laid their hands on you even one time, you need to start forming your plan of escape. You can't live, you deserve better than that.
Right. Well, a lot of times if there's a child welfare action and the abuse has been occurring in front of the children, there may be a safety plan that involves removing the children from the house and putting them into a home or foster care or something, at least temporarily.
Right.
So you're taking a big risk if you just let it happen in front of the kids.
Right. And then if they do come and your spouse is arrested and taken to jail, well, then if, you know, unless they're able to bail out or whatever, or they do serve some jail time, then they're probably not earning an income. They could potentially lose their job. Like, there's all these things that you have to start thinking through of, you know, how you can support yourself, how you can save money, how you can, you know, build a war chest and all that kind of thing.
Who can you know, make a list of people that you could live with temporarily, maybe, is a good step.
Right. Who are your resources?
And there's also shelters.
Yeah, I said that earlier.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I wasn't listening.
That's okay. You don't listen a lot of the time. But here's what happens when you file this. Okay, let's walk through this a little bit. And like Thomas always says, other jurisdictions could be different, but pretty much, at least in California, this is how it goes. And I think it's pretty similar in other states. So what happens is, okay, let's say you decide you're going to file a restraining order against the person because they're abusive, and you go down and to the court, and they have a free domestic violence clinic in the San Diego court, and I think most places have that.
Well, some do and some don't.
Yeah, but you have to check your local court. But in San Diego, we have a free DV clinic, and so you go down to the DV clinic, you fill out your paperwork, and then you write a declaration about what's happened, and then what happens is they send that to the judge. Now, the judge's role at that point is just to decide on a temporary basis, do I think this person needs urgent protection, like immediate protection right now? And if you've got pictures of being beaten and all those types of things, you know, that pretty good chance that they're going to find you need some immediate protection.
The temporary is almost always granted.
Right. So you get this temporary order, okay? And what happens once the temporary order is in place is that the court has to set a hearing within, 21 days?
21 days.
Okay. So within, and again, this is here where we are, but the court has to set a hearing within 21 days. So what happens is the marshal then takes this and serves the other person. Now, we've had lots of situations where we've represented husbands in this situation, and what happens is he's pretty much blindsided. Like he's given this order. It's usually got an order that he leave the residence. He has to go in. They will give him 10 to 15 minutes to gather his stuff, and then he's got to leave. And he's going to be out for at least 21 days, right, with whatever he's gathered.
Right.
Okay.
And the kids, and they give the children, they give the victim temporary custody of the children.
Right. And so then at the 21-day hearing is when they decide whether it's going to become a permanent order or not. And permanent orders can be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, can have varying lengths of time.
Yeah.
But
in California. We hasten to emphasize.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We're going to keep saying that through the whole episode probably.
Right.
Again, it's probably similar, but I'm just trying to give you kind of a concept of how this flows.
Right.
So
right. The first objective of the court is to protect the safety of the parties. So they're going to err on the side of caution. They're going to grant the temporary and serve the temporary, and then we're going to have a hearing on what the other side claims is that that's not what happened. So
right.
we have a hearing on that, and the alleged abuser has a chance to file a written response and then present testimony in court that supports their position. And I've represented successfully several people have been served with these and gotten them dismissed.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that happens is, if you can ask for support also as part of this process, because what happens as soon as the other person's served, if they're the moneyed spouse, if they earn more than you, they're probably going to withdraw all support at that point. So you have to be prepared and ready for that and have, some sort of I had a girlfriend in high school whose mom said a girl should always have at least one credit card in her name only, so that if she needs to get a hotel for the night or she needs to whatever to,
Do you have a credit card?
I have several credit cards in my name only, but that's because I came into the marriage with them. Like I already had them. Actually they were, I think most of them were joint accounts from my previous marriage, but then he was removed.
I don't trust you.
Again, I think one of the things to understand is that this is probably going to take longer than you think. So you're not going to file a domestic violence restraining order, and then have support start flowing to you within 2 weeks. Like that's, in all likelihood, not going to happen. And honestly, I've seen attorneys go in and file for emergency orders for support, and occasionally you'll get lucky and get that depending on the judge. But for the vast majority, they say finances aren't considered an emergency.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not threat of life or limb, so they're not considered an emergency.
Yeah.
So, the other thing to consider is that, domestic violence cases are very, very expensive. And so it's going to cost you, thousands and thousands depending on how long this goes and the outcome of it. So that's another thing that you have to be kind of
now you can proceed
pro per. You can.
But
I'm just saying if you hire an attorney.
I don't want to dissuade anybody, but it does start if you're getting a divorce, it starts your case off with a huge financial explosion.
Right. Yeah. And even if you're not getting a divorce, you're probably looking at $5,000 to $10,000 at least for a domestic violence case just in and of itself without the divorce aspect.
True.
And then if you have a divorce on top of that, that adds a whole nother layer of cost to it. So I think people just don't often, I mean, I'm not trying to tell you it will cost X amount or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you, like I said, concepts of how this goes and what it kind of looks like so that you have some frame of reference of how to prepare for this. Right. Because people are blindsided by this process.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess my concern is I don't want people that are living in abusive relationships that have finally decided that they need this kind of intervention to not get it because they're afraid of the attorney fees. The domestic violence clinics are excellent. And there's all kinds of help and shelters, and there's a support system that's been set up by the advocates. There's some very strong advocates in this area, right. And you can probably find your local advocates very easily by just a Google search.
Right, and I agree with all of that. I'm just saying that if you're planning your exit, plan for this.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Plan
if you have
that there's
the
going to be
luxury
expense
of planning your exit, plan for this.
No, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody should stay in any abusive situation, money or no money. I think you have to get out. The moral of the story is this is really a long-term game. This isn't a short-term game. And when I say that, I don't mean, game fun, ha ha. I mean, this is a long-term battle. You're probably not going to be in and out. I mean, like Thomas said, some of them are, but the vast majority, I think, are not. And so your objective in this is to win the war, not just this battle. And so you need to kind of have that long-term thought process, long-term strategy in place for what you're going to do. Like Thomas said, make a list of, people you can stay with or, different things you can do if you need to get you and or your kids out of an abusive situation.
Right. And realize that there are some things up with which you should not put. You should not suffer in silence, even if you're, I'm a Christian man, and I go to a Baptist church, and we are believers in the Lord Jesus. But I don't think, as many church people do, that you have to sit there and endure abuse. You're not obligated under the law of God to have somebody beat on you. There's no excuse for that. And really what it takes, in my view, is you have to have good boundaries. You have to say, I'm not a punching bag. I'm not a doormat. And I need to take steps to protect my own well-being and that of the children, which will change your feelings.
Absolutely.
Which will change your life.
Said.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.